Y él me agarró a mí como un hijo. Y yo,
He took me as a son, and I accepted it. I said yes, like a political son, but I thought it was a big commitment. One day, I gave Fidel a gift, a gun that I used when I was a cadet. We got it there in an old park, and I got it fixed. And Fidel turned 57 years old, and he said, "I remember this." And I took your gun. For me, it was a gift. For me, it was a commitment. Chavez, one of those people who will never turn away from imperialism. We had this dynamic, a person constantly involving. He grew up in the poverty and knew the poverty of workers and farmers. Very straightforward. In him, you cannot find a better memory than what he had. When he had an idea, uh, when a concept went into his mind, he never was erased. It's incredible. I'm just going to repeat this on behalf of the Venezuelan people. We want to thank you for your time, for your affection, for that love of brotherhood and sisterhood. Love is paid back with love, brother. Speech by Comandante Hugo Chavez Frias at the closing session of the ALBA meeting. One day, Raul said to me, "Well, tell my nephew something." And I said, "Who's your nephew?" Who's? He said, "Hugo Chavez is my nephew." Because since he says that Fidel is his dad, then I'm his uncle. And it's true. Fidel bestowed the honor upon me. Thank you, Comandante, of making me his son. And that's how it feels to me. I feel like it is a tremendous honor, and I hope that I am worthy of it. I hope I'm worthy. History will tell. It's not yet time to say. Once Fidel did one of those many sublime verbal traps that he did there in Sandino when he said something in the middle of a speech by a president that lasted I don't know how long. And he said, "Chavez, history will absolve us." And I said, "What do you mean history will absolve us?" "Yes, it will absolve us." I said, "You're absolved, not me. You can't put me up there with you." And he knew that my reasoning was unquestionable. And he said, "Well, history told me that you would be absolved." History told me that it would absolve you.
Para la partida de un amigo que nos devolvió la risa. No hay ceniza, tanto corazón dolido, no se va a creer la prisa de la muerte que ha intentado manchar su roja camisa.
At this time, we recall details of the first meeting between Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro, a meeting that set the course for relations between Cuba and Venezuela, the genesis of Latin American integration. The anthem of both nations resounded in the main hall of the University of Havana, where Cuban students were taught by Hugo Chavez and the insurgency that he sought to start in Venezuela and extend to all of Latin America. For us, the coming century is the century of hope. It is our century. It is the century of the resurrection of the Bolivarian dream, of Marty's dream, of the Latin American dream.
Traces of a timeless and ongoing national project were emerging. A transformative vision inspired by the liberator Bolivar that would find its foundations in the alliance of oppressed peoples against North American hegemony.
And to see the triumphant revolution of this beautiful part of South America.
This meeting was the spearhead for Latin American integration, the vocation for struggle and the great national projects of Comandante Chavez, whose leadership was immediately recognized by Comandante Fidel Castro. We can say that he is worthy of these and many greater honors. What began with an invitation as a speaker aligned the leadership and the independence conviction of these two human beings. A vision that spread to countries all over the world and continues to be valid.
Greetings, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed, alongside me, the videos showing the very roots of the relationship between Cuba and Venezuela, of course, that existed between revolutionaries before the Cuban and Venezuelan revolutions began and before the Bolivarian Revolution began, but were accelerated in especially strong and fraternal ties after the beginning of the Bolivarian revolutionary process in 1998, when President Hugo Chavez was first elected. Of course, today there are many people on this call that have extensive experience and analysis about the strong ties that bind the people of Cuba and the people of Venezuela, and their work together in confronting the United States empire, which continues to breed destruction and genocide across the world, but also in Latin America. I want to welcome everyone to today's Venezuela Solidarity Network online picket and webinar. This is a monthly event organized by a network of individuals and organizations across the United States, Canada, and Britain. My name is Alison Bodine. I am speaking to you here from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations in Vancouver, Canada. I'm a founding member of the Venezuela Solidarity Network and also coordinator of Fire This Time Movement for Social Justice Venezuela Solidarity Campaign here in Vancouver, Canada, and author of the book Revolution and Counter-Revolution in Venezuela. It is my honor to be with you all here today, as I said, at a time when the United States is continuing to bring further death and destruction to the world, but specifically to Latin America. But also, Venezuela and Cuba in particular are celebrating and marking the extraordinary friendship of more than 25 years in confronting the US empire. In April 2026, Venezuela and Cuba marked 23 years of the Barrio Adentro Medical Mission, a social program launched by Presidents Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez in 2003. This program, which continues to bring free, accessible healthcare to people in Venezuela, has been continuously expanded and in the last decade achieved 100% coverage of the country. Barrio Adentro is only one example of the mutual solidarity that Cuba and Venezuela have developed for more than 25 years. So we look forward in today's program to hearing from people in the United States, Venezuela, and Cuba about the character, importance, and impact of this mutual solidarity, especially in the face of the continued genocidal US blockade against Cuba, sanctions against Venezuela, and escalating threats and attacks by the US Trump administration in the region. The Venezuela Solidarity Network, as I mentioned, is a North America-based network of organizations and individuals working to defend Venezuela's sovereignty and self-determination against US government-led sanctions and attacks. And I encourage you to join us in our organizing. I've just put the information on how to do so in the chat. I'll also just say a big thank you to Jill and Giselle, who are interpreters for tonight. So in dealing with multiple countries connecting to Zoom and the challenges, of course, of the US blockade, our program's going to have to be a little bit flexible tonight. When people have power and connection ability, then we'll go ahead and invite them to speak. Of course, our co-fighters in Venezuela are also busy with many other important projects, so we really appreciate their time in joining. So Yanni, I'll go ahead and invite you up next. Yanni Garcia Caes is the coordinator of the Venezuela-Cuba Mutual Friendship and Solidarity Movement, and someone I've had the pleasure many times of meeting in Cuba and also in Venezuela. Yanni, please tell us about the importance of the relationship between Cuba and Venezuela, and also your current work in the context of continued U.S. attack.
Yes, thank you very much. And greetings to all of the comrades who are here with us and have taken up this banner of Bolivarian struggle for Cuba and for Venezuela. And we are grateful for all of the efforts you are making from your countries to uphold the Bolivarian and Cuban examples. In this, we're grateful. Both Chavez and Fidel would be grateful. And also, Allison, we want to thank all of the comrades that are part of this platform of struggle from your own respective homelands. And we thank you and have great respect for the work that you do. We were just seeing some images of Comandante Fidel Castro and Comandante Hugo Chavez and giving guidance to our peoples. First, I'd like to say that they talked about brotherhood and friendship between Venezuela and Cuba. That is historic. And this goes back to the time and when we were struggling for independence. There are very serious studies that certified that the first woman who nursed our liberator was a Cuban. So there are historic ties that unite our peoples and allow us to continue to deepen the relations between the peoples of Cuba and Venezuela. But there is something else that is important to recognize. At the time of the struggle for liberation, on the American continent and the battles of our liberator, many Cubans came to join those struggles of the Venezuelan people. Cubans participated directly in each of those battles. And of course, there's a long history of this, and the story continues to move forward with the synergies between our two peoples. And we see that with the arrival of President Comandante Hugo Chavez when he became president, and he consolidated what had already existed historically by strengthening the relations between our peoples. Comandante Chavez, and with the invincible Comandante Fidel Castro, they said, we talked about how you do politics in this hemisphere and the example of cooperation, the example of solidarity, everything that was laid out for our peoples. This comprehensive agreement between Venezuela and Cuba yielded tremendous results. And this had a major impact on health, education, and many other areas of life, and the Venezuelan and Cuban economies. All of this is part of the new ways to conduct politics and the consolidation of a very strong friendship and a relationship of respect and mutual admiration, and between the two comandantes as well. In this regard, we would say that just recently we've had another anniversary. One of the great the visions of this organic situation, or one of the great missions, was the Barrio Adentro. And figures, statistics are very important. You can talk about the number of people in Venezuela who benefited from the generous, tender hand of Cuban doctors and Cuban nurses, and people who learned how to read and write through the Yo Si Puedo program, the literacy program, or people who lost their vision, their sight, were able to once again see light and colors thanks to the miracle mission. So it's been the cataract surgeries. It's been a very important and impactful on our peoples, and we have been saying this for a long time. There is no chance of breaking that historic brotherhood, and the solidarity between Cuba and Venezuela is not up for discussion. There is no pressure, there is no aggression that could allow us to not continue deepening this historic sense between our countries.
And as an example of this, there are around 250,000 Cuban collaborators here in Venezuela, guaranteeing health, sport, education, farming, many other sectors. And obviously, the people of Venezuela feel deeply committed, because there is no way to pay back all of the effort that the Cuban people have carried out and the immense social work that the Bolivarian Revolution has also carried out. So in times like this, in times of aggression against Cuba, the increases in the blockade and the possibility of a military invasion, and of course the economic and energetic asphyxiation, in the face of this, Venezuela cannot remain isolated. Important things are being done to help Cuba, to give all of our solidarity, our admiration, our hugs, so that Cuba continues to be the light that shines on the continent and the world. These people have not forgotten all of the teachings of Hugo Chavez, those he transmitted by saying that love was paid with love. We know what the arrival of the helpers from Cuba meant to Venezuela. So we have initiated a campaign of solidarity with Cuba, and it has the name Love is Paid with Love. It's a phrase by Martí, but Hugo Chavez also used it. So in the framework of the convoy, many friends of ours that are part of these platforms of struggle and solidarity that have been grouped by the Consejo Simón Bolívar and the Grupo Simón Bolívar, the Socialist Party, and the Polo Patriótico, we have been carrying out important campaigns to bring solidarity and love and consciousness and help between our peoples. That is why we use the chant and the label of solidarity between Cuba and Venezuela is indestructible. We continue to bring all of our love to this island that is really worthy of the love of the entire world, because Cuba has given so much so that the most humble of the peoples of the world can head forth. When there was Ebola outbreaks, it was the Cuban doctors that went to Africa to help. In more than 150 countries, they have received medical help from Cuba. And it's not only in the topic of vaccines, but it's also finding a way to help bring medical help in different situations of pandemics. So from Venezuela, we will continue to strengthen and continue forth in bringing help. We will give our efforts to help this revolution that has been the light of the people of the world. We expect that they continue to do what they do. There is no way that we will stop this. We will continue to bring our love. We will be in a permanent hug. This is what Martí taught us. Those are the ideas that Chavez and Fidel brought to us. Miguel Díaz-Canel and Nicolás Maduro, and now with Delcy Rodriguez, we will continue to strengthen the brotherly and sisterly ties between our peoples. From Venezuela, I say that we continue to bring our help and our solidarity. Our solidarity is indestructible. Thank you very much.
Venceremos. Thank you, Yanni, for describing some of the history of the solidarity and the work of the Venezuela-Cuba Mutual Friendship and Solidarity movement that continues until today. Lidice, I think, has connected differently to try and speak with us again. Lidice Altuve is vice president of the Simón Bolívar Institutes, and I'm hoping you could build on what Yanni has said and also discuss the institutional solidarity between Cuba and Venezuela.
Well, I want to greet all of you, friends, those that are connected. I want to thank our friend Allison. I see that Vladimir is connected from the Instituto Simón Bolívar. To the friends of Code Pink and Johnny, can you hear me well? Yes, perfectly. More than a historical overview of the profound relationship between the peoples of Cuba and Venezuela, our revolutions, the Bolivarian Revolution, the Cuban Revolution. The topic of this meeting was more than 25 years of solidarity between Cuba and Venezuela, and I think it's very opportune. I want to thank, on behalf of the Instituto Simón Bolívar, this time to share our visions, what we're doing here in Venezuela, and to say greetings from the Instituto Simón Bolívar in the name of our president, Blanca Ecaut, who's also a congresswoman. I also would like you to know that the Instituto is a platform that is born in 2020 in the midst of COVID. It's a creation of our president, Nicolás Maduro, who vindicated and ratified and strengthened the vocation, the internationalist and unionist vocation of our revolution. And what we saw in those videos in the beginning about what brotherhood and sisterhood is. The Institute has as a mission and a reason for being to coordinate and strengthen and deepen the solidarity and friendship of Venezuela with just causes of the peoples. And also, of course, to be able to make it known. Nicolás Maduro would say that the friends of the world should take this instrument of Simón Bolívar to go and say Venezuela's truth. Allison asked us to talk to you tonight about what we're doing in Venezuela. We want to vindicate that historical relationship. And from the start with the revolution in Cuba. Friends, I also want to say that this is a very complex moment for humanity and for the region. And I think that any analysis that we can bring to you, this morning we were having a meeting with all of different movements from around the world about the decisions that Venezuela has been taking taking into consideration what happened in January. And we want to share with you, friends, that our brotherhood, our commitment, our conviction, as Johnny was saying, with the Cuban Revolution, that is intact. The Instituto Simón Bolívar, in its mission as a platform or as an instrument to call on the noble causes of the world, We have called for a very large campaign within Venezuela. And I am talking in the name of different organizations and social movements in Venezuela that have come together in this campaign called Love is Paid with Love. It's a campaign that was started on the 25th of February, and it's in its first phase. Johnny was talking about how organizations and institutions are coming together around what the president of ICAP said is to deepen solidarity beyond words towards the real needs of the people of Venezuela, of Cuba, given the deepening of the blockade. There is a campaign that started on the 25th of February to gather medications, those that are in highest need in the Cuban revolution. We have called, Johnny also said this, these organizations are coming from the bases of Venezuela and Cuba. The person that headed our delegation was Castro. He is the president of the Solidarity from the National Assembly with the people of Cuba. What we want to say is that this national campaign that contains movements, social organizations, different forces, and political parties, and they are seeking to be a part of this campaign, Love is Paid with Love. We also say, friends, we were saying this morning, one of the biggest challenges that we have as revolutionaries as a part of this movement, we were saying this to our friend. We had a very strong meeting with the Cuban Institute of Solidarity with the Peoples. We need to say that there is a document that states how these organizations get together. We were saying to Noemi and presenting her and other social organizations, we were talking about the different phases of this campaign. We were saying that in this campaign, the whole country has come together, all of the organizations, and we can't allow, because a big part of solidarity is this platform that the Cuban people have been organizing for so many years. We say that Cuba is not alone. Venezuela continues to be by its side. We say that whatever hurts Cuba hurts Venezuela as well. We have called on different organizations in order to get funds to help the electrical system in this second phase. Recently, we also, in this phase, many people got together. We also made a concert called Un Canto por Cuba. We're also finding ways of bringing food. The people, organizations, movements have been constructing throughout the country in this phase. They're contributing with food, medicine, and we expect to now strengthen it even further.
And since January 3rd, brothers and sisters, as you know, more than 100 Venezuelan died, including 32 Cuban comrades who were supporting the security detail of our president and first combatant Celia Flores. And so we have been honoring them, that brotherhood. And this is deepened with the commitment of our people, as was also stated by Comrade Johnny. We could say that part of this network of solidarity with Venezuela, we have often said that a large part of the battle of this Bolivarian revolution has been that thanks to solidarity, we've been able to meet up with various organizations allied with our revolution. But this morning at the video conference that was so extraordinary, the one held by William Castillo and the Deputy Minister of Finance and also coordinator of the Anti-Blockade Observatory, we'd like to say that we lived through a very difficult period of time internally in Venezuela, a time of tremendous adversity. And we are moving forward in our country. For each of the decisions, that many of them are tactical decisions, we must not lose sight of the strategic objective of the Bolivarian Revolution. I want to share a reflection on this. And I hope that we can also contribute to this, the international view of the situation. We view Comandante Hugo Chavez, we view President Nicolás Maduro, who continues to be the legitimate constitutional president of our country, and we see the current acting president, Delcy Rodriguez, because she was the vice president to President Nicolás Maduro. We do not view these as different governments. They are the extension of the Chavista and Bolivarian revolutionary project. Why does this matter? This is a campaign which, as is true, was convened by the Institute and the various political forces and the various movements and organizations, but it is a campaign that has also been accompanied by our government. We have been at complete liberty through work throughout the country in order to wage this campaign strongly. It is important for you to know that we are committed in our organizations, in the social movements. We are committed to this campaign. It's not just a one-time thing to collect donations and try to meet the demand today of saving lives in Cuba, but also this is what we have learned. And as Johnny said, we will not have any threats or that it is not impossible for us to not continue to strengthen our historic friendship with Cuba. And this is, they've been trying to divide us through cognitive warfare and through a disinformation campaign. They've been trying to break us. They have been trying to raise doubts about our position, about the strength and commitment that continues to our commitment to the Bolivarian Revolution and our commitment to solidarity with Cuba. Some people might have said, well, you have to strengthen the information mechanism. But in Venezuela, we also say a few things. And amidst this very complex and difficult situation we are currently living through, we said President Nicolás Maduro said a few things. Then sometimes things have to be done in silence, but not these statements. This is a campaign that has had all kinds of statements, not through the press, through testimonies, various media outlets, radio, television, different social media networks, and different political and social movements, all in favor of this campaign. And I'd like to end by saying that we have to multiply these spaces, these networks of solidarity and places to get information about what we're doing in Venezuela, but also what is being done throughout the world to save the Cuban Revolution. And we will continue to head this up, as we say here. We will continue to work hand in hand with that sister revolution that we learned so much from Fidel, which we continue to learn from. And of course, we will continue to work together and united down that path. As I said, in the case of Venezuela, this is the Bolivarian revolution, but in Bolivar, in Maduro, and in Nicolas, who is now a symbol of resistance and dignity, but also with Compañera Delcy, who now has had to confront imperialism. But we were saying that we have those three objectives. One is to maintain peace, to keep peace in the country, because we know on January 3rd, with more than 1,000 unilateral coercive measures that continue to be in place, they wanted to do away with the Bolivarian Revolution. Brothers and sisters, in this very difficult circumstance, we have decided to maintain political power. The government is in our hands. The Bolivarian government today has all of the institutions and all of the branches of government with institutional stability. And we have maintained this since January 3rd. And fundamentally, brothers and sisters, our third objective and mission, which is also part of our revolutionary commitment of Venezuelan men and women. And I want you to also join in this major campaign for the freedom of President Nicolás Maduro and Compañera Cilia Flores. We will not turn our backs on them in these very difficult circumstances, and we will continue to add people to this global movement of solidarity with the Cuban Revolution, but knowing that Cuba and Venezuela, as we've been saying, are under a single banner, and we hope that with this brotherhood we can come out victorious from this difficult situation. So I echo what Allison has said. We will continue to inform you on this campaign of love is paid back with love. And so this is a campaign expressing the very deep ties of friendship between our two peoples. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lirice Altuve, for connecting with us today. And if it's possible, or if anyone on this call has the link to today's webinar organized by the Simón Bolívar Institute earlier this morning, I think it would be excellent to share it. And thank you for sharing from it. And for all of your work and solidarity. And please, yes, keep us informed about the Amor con Amor Se Paga campaign. I see Morales is also here from the Simón Bolívar Institute. Morales, I don't know if there's anything you want to add at this time. You could indicate if so, or turn on your camera. Thank you also for joining us. I will say that I have been working all day with our compañera in Cuba, Maria del Carmen Barroso, who is here from the Simón Bolívar Institute, has been making a tremendous effort to get us a video she recorded due to the blackouts imposed on Cuba by the U.S. oil blockade, the criminal U.S. oil blockade, and the continued other impacts of the blockade. It is very difficult for Cubans to connect on Zoom, if not impossible, and also sending videos and documents has become even more difficult, in addition to the deadly impacts of Trump's criminal policies. But I have received now some audio notes and some photos. I'm just trying to get them compiled in a way that I can share them here, and we can hear from our compañera Maria del Carmen from the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples. But David, I hope you don't mind me pulling you up now to give some reflections about the importance of U.S. And Canada, North America-based solidarity with Cuba and Venezuela. And while I finish up the voice notes from Maria, that would be great. David Paul, and let me introduce you properly. David Paul is with the Sanctions Kill Coalition, Task Force on the Americas, and the Democratic Socialists of America, as well as a founding member of the Venezuela Solidarity Network. He's based in San Francisco in the United States, and has recently been in Venezuela, in Cuba, and then also just got back from Washington, D.C., where he was participating in the efforts of Sanctions Kill and Code Pink to fight for fight against U.S. foreign policy. So, David, share your thoughts. Welcome. Good to see you.
Just trying to change my interpretation here. Nice. Okay. Yeah, thank you. And really appreciated Edith's comments and Johnny's comments about the importance. I've gone to many trips to Venezuela and Cuba, most recently bringing medical aid, part of delegations. And I've always been inspired by this spirit of independence, this spirit of dignity that really inherited from the struggles of Bolivar and Martí and reignited in Hugo Chavez and Fidel Castro. This feeling that of empowerment that seems to be irreversible. Now remember this video of Fidel. This is also something that Venezuela and Cuba share. He said the most important value for a revolutionary is courage. And I see that in so many examples in Cuba and Venezuela. I saw that they both have a shared vision, a moral clarity about creating an alternative to the world of greed and violence of capitalism. And they also remind us that the problems are not because of an individual president of the United States, but it's a pattern, a system of imperialism that really acts as an international gangster. And they've said it clearly. What their plan is full spectrum dominance throughout the world. And they attack and isolate any country or movement that tries an independent path, forms alliances because they fear mostly when poor and working class people get organized, whether it's in unions, whether it's in communes in Venezuela. And they also fear, and many people in Cuba and Venezuela express this, they fear that the consciousness of people in other countries that have hope of breaking out of the system of capitalism is something they fear. And in this country, they try to make us feel that that's the only way to live is under capitalism. It's inevitable. And also Cuba and Venezuela, also like they expressed during COVID, and when they talk about climate change and just peace in the world, they emphasize that our survival depends on cooperation and collaboration. These two countries also remind us that the United Nations Charter lays out the relationships and behavior between countries and the value of self-determination and sovereignty. And it's crazy that they have to remind us of that. There are treaties that this country signed and breaks all the time. And they also remind us that we in this country in the global north have more in common with the working class people in Cuba and Venezuela than the ruling class in this country. And the thing I was most impressed with in many places where we're distributing medicines, where we're talking about food distribution, is this consciousness of the common good. It's such a priority and value in Cuba and Venezuela. And they extend that to the whole human family through their internationalism. And also that human rights for health, education, housing is embedded in their constitution. It's not just platitudes. And I think that people in this country need to make the connections between what our foreign policy is doing and the domestic policies of our government, which is really a war on democracy in the working class. The criminalization of dissent, the theft and privatization of public resources, the militarization of our cities is very similar and connected to the attack on other countries who try to have an independent path blocking and sabotaging their public sector, like in Cuba, the military threats and attacks, that it's the new form of diplomacy. I think that Cuba and Venezuela remind us and recognize that it's not just a war against Cuba and Venezuela, but it's also a war on the left and progressive forces. It's a war against any socialist project. And it's so important that we combine our efforts and work on all fronts. Not everyone has the same skills or position to do everything, but we all should support people who work in universities, support working with unions, churches, hold our elected representatives accountable. And this really is a battle of ideas, and we can't remain silent. We have to try to help change the narrative about what's happening in Venezuela and Cuba and what our country is doing to those countries. Try to maximize our contact on the local media, social media, and also I think it's important to connect with progressive media in Latin America, to have consistent messaging and learn from their experiences. It seems also very important to make visible the voices of people struggling in Cuba and Venezuela, showing the human impact of our unjust and illegal policies, and make people here see the situation as if it was in that they were in that position. How would people feel here if they really saw the injustice of our policies, that our policies are killing children in Cuba and Venezuela and destroying their future only to enrich the power and wealth of a few politicians in this country? I think it's also important that we, in raising those voices of people in this country, make connections, have interchanges between the youth and universities there and here, and try to connect representatives of different sectors, whether it be health, industry, agriculture, with counterparts in this country. I think it's very important to, and I learned more of this when I was in Cuba is to really show people how the levels of democracy and popular participation that exist that most people don't realize. I really feel it's important that we, in the progressive community here in this country, spend less time scrutinizing the internal dynamics of Cuba and Venezuela while they are under constant attack and sanctions. And it's, I'm borrowing a phrase from someone that they said, if we in this country have a difficulty even electing a local school board member, we should be cautious about trying to criticize another country under constant attack and blockade and criticizing that they are not socialist enough. We have to look at our own situation. So solidarity is not just sympathy, but a necessary act for our mutual survival, because we do have a common enemy, the greed and corruption of capitalism, which is destroying our rights and our future. Cuba and Venezuela are a threat to the fascist elites, but they are definitely a hope for a better world. And they need all of our support. The end the blockade on Cuba, end the sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela, and free President Maduro and First Lady Celia Flores. And I hope we can join our efforts to do this and support these two proud and dignified and courageous people. Thank you.
Thank you very much to David Paul for sharing those important reflections on your time in Cuba and Venezuela as part of encouraging people to get involved. There's, of course, the Venezuela Solidarity Network, which I put link in the chat to join and encourage people to join. But I also encourage you to learn more about, and of course, anyone in the chat can post the ongoing organizing against the US blockade on Cuba. A number of people from across North America are likely packing their bags or already on their way to Cuba for International Workers' Day, May 1st. Participating in international brigades and bringing as much humanitarian aid as they can on their way. In the Venezuela Solidarity Network, we hope to have news soon about opportunities to visit Venezuela and continue learning about Venezuela and the Bolivarian revolutionary process and more about the US attacks. And I also wanted to point people to an article which relates very much to what we've been discussing today, because it includes a quote which I'll read in a second, but the article is by Roger Harris, who is also an organizer with the U.S. Peace Council and Task Force on the Americas, as well as the Venezuela Solidarity Network, who was in Venezuela and described a visit to the fort that was bombed by the U.S. on January 3rd, and was there at a time when there was a tribute to Cuba. In the article, it states, in a tribute to Cuba, residents said they do not speak of solidarity with Cubans because, quote, we are all one people. They praised Cubans' courage, including the 32 presidential guards murdered by the U.S. in the January 3rd attack. They also highlighted Cuba's generosity in helping Venezuela achieve a, quote, territory free of illiteracy status by 2025. Programs such as Mission Barrio Adentro brought thousands of Cuban doctors into poor urban and rural communities to provide free community care. Most of all, they deeply lamented the current U.S. military blockade of Cuba, which has prevented Venezuela from supplying vital oil to the island. The suffering imposed by Washington on the Cubans pained them deeply, and it goes on. So I encourage people to please read and share this article, which contains other important reflections in addition to what I have just read there. So our video from our Cuban compañera is just about ready. I just need to get it downloaded. And I wanted to highlight that we do have some time if there are questions, if people have any questions they want to ask of our speakers that are with us here today, please go ahead and put those in the chat. There is also going to be some announcements made at the end for upcoming events. 1 second. Where'd the video go? Okay. Buenas tardes a todos. Okay. Looks like that's going to work out great. Again, this will be a photo with some voice notes from our compañera and co-fighter in Cuba with the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples. Maria del Carmen Barroso is the liaison with Venezuela at the Latin America and Caribbean Division of the Cuban Institute of Friendship with the Peoples.
Buenas tardes a todas y todos los
Good
amigos
afternoon,
de la
everyone,
Red de Solidaridad con Venezuela que participan en este webinar.
of the Venezuela
Muy
Solidarity Network that
importante,
is
me parece que
creating
muy
this
importante esta
webinar.
iniciativa y
I think
la
this
apoyaremos
initiative
y
is very
participaremos
important
siempre.
and
Bueno,
we support
yo
it
hice
and will continue to
una
support it always.
breve intervención que he enviado por
I will have
Telegram,
a brief
por otra aplicación también, pero la conectividad está muy mala.
I
Y
have
entonces
very
solo
bad
quería enviar este
connectivity, so this will
mensaje,
be
¿no?
brief.
Para poder participar. En primer lugar,
I just
yo
wanted to be
creo
able to
que
participate.
los lazos de amistad entre Venezuela y
The
Cuba
first thing is that the
vienen
relations between
desde
Venezuela
muchos
and
años
Cuba
atrás. Recuerden cuando
go
Martí
very
dijo
far
que al
back
llegar a Caracas,
from
sin
where
quitarse el
Martí
polvo del
went to
camino,
Caracas.
fue ante la estatua de Simón Bolívar
He went
para
to the
rendirle
statue
homenaje
of
al
Simón
libertador.
Bolívar
y después
pay him
hemos
his
tenido también
respects.
la participación de luchadores
We
en
have
diferentes
seen the
momentos, luchadores venezolanos en
participations,
Cuba, luchadores
the
cubanos en
participation
Venezuela,
of
y hemos estado
Venezuelans in
participando ambos
Cuba
pueblos en sus
and vice
luchas por
versa
la liberación y la emancipación. En esta última etapa
for liberation
hemos
and
tenido
emancipation.
la
In this
fortaleza
last
de dos
phase,
líderes
we have seen the
que nacieron
strength
en el
of two
pasado
leaders
siglo, llegaron hasta este
that were
siglo
born
y nos
in the
dejaron
last
un legado.
century and
Yo
came to
creo
this one.
que la
I
solidaridad con
believe
Venezuela
that solidarity with
hoy más que
today
nunca
more
es
than
necesaria
ever
reforzarla.
is
Diría
needed,
lo
and we need
siguiente,
to
después
strengthen
del
it.
3 de enero,
Strengthen it.
en que se produjo
After
una
the 3rd
agresión
of
militar a
January,
este país por tropas norteamericanas,
where troops from the United States came into the country,
esa intervención militar, esa agresión
that
militar a Venezuela por
military
tropas
incursion in
norteamericanas,
Venezuela
que viola la carta de la Organización de
that
Naciones
violates
Unidas, es
the
una
UN
violación
Charter
flagrante a los derechos humanos,
is a
en la que
flagrant
se
human rights
secuestró, quiero
violation.
insistir en la palabra, se secuestró al presidente
And
constitucional de
the
Venezuela, a
constitutional
Nicolás Maduro
president
Moro,
of
y a
Venezuela
la
was
compañera
kidnapped.
diputada Cilia
I
Flores.
want to insist on that word, kidnapped. Same goes for
El
Cilia
cubanismo
Flores.
está atento a todos los procesos
The
revolucionarios que
Cuban
se producen en
people
nuestro
are
continente y no perdonan
looking,
esa
have
revolución
seen what
bolivariana.
happened,
Yo creo
and we don't forgive
que,
it.
y sé que lo están haciendo tanto la Red de Solidaridad como muchas organizaciones en
I
el
know
mundo,
that the Venezuela
han
Solidarity Network,
demandado con
as well
mucha
as
fuerza
other
que se liberen
organizations,
inmediatamente a los compañeros
have
Nicolás Maduro Moro
demanded
y a Cilia
that
Flores y que los
Nicolás Maduro
devuelvan a su
Moros and
patria.
Cilia
En el
Flores
caso
be
de Cuba,
released and be brought
estamos
back home.
inmersos en muchas acciones como
In
muestra de
Cuba, in the
solidaridad
same
con el
way, we
hermano
have shown
pueblo
the
venezolano
solidarity
por las
that we
agresiones
have
que han
with
sufrido durante
the
mucho
Venezuelan
tiempo, y
people
nosotros
in the
reiteramos y
face of these
ratificamos
aggressions.
nuestra convicción y nuestra
And we
decisión
reiterate
de
our
continuar
conviction
apoyando al
and
pueblo
our decision
venezolano.
to continue to support the Venezuelan people.
Nuestra solidaridad es incondicional y yo
Our
creo que en los
solidarity
últimos
is
años estos dos
unconditional,
grandes líderes, Fidel Castro Ruz y Hugo
and
Chávez,
that
los
was
cuales nos
shown
dejaron un
by
legado,
our great leaders,
nuestros
Fidel
dos
Castro
pueblos
and
se
Hugo
han
Chavez.
hermanado, y estos dos grandes
Our
líderes,
peoples
compañeros,
have increased
construyeron,
their
desarrollaron
links, their
proyectos
brotherhood.
de cooperación
There
importantes
have
y
been
beneficiosos para
important
nuestros dos
cooperation
pueblos,
projects
en los cuales
between
en
the
Venezuela
peoples.
hemos enviado a personal de salud, médicos,
We have
enfermeras,
sent
técnicos,
healthcare workers
personal del área de deporte, de la cultura,
to
de todas las esferas
Venezuela,
que contribuyen al
cultural
desarrollo
workers,
social
people that work in
de
sports,
Venezuela. Nosotros reiteramos nuestro
and
apoyo
we
incondicional a
reiterate
la revolución
our
bolivariana,
unconditional support to the
a su
Bolivarian
pueblo, que
Revolution.
hoy también resiste
They're
los embates del
people
bloqueo
who
y amenazas del
today
gobierno de los Estados
also
Unidos.
fight
Desde
against a
Cuba,
blockade from
nosotros
the United States.
estamos convencidos que lograremos
In
la
Cuba, we are
victoria de
convinced
que nos
that we
que
will
devuelvan a Nicolás
win
Maduro
the
y a su
fight,
compañera Cilia Flora a Venezuela, y desde Cuba
and
nosotros
that
nos mantenemos
Maduro
alerta
and
ante
Cilia
todas las
Flores
acciones
will
que
be
se hacen.
released.
Quiero aprovechar para
I
saludar
want
a los hermanos
to
también de Venezuela
take
que están ahí,
some
hermanos
time
nuestros
to
que
say my
se
greetings
anunciaron y que
to
conocemos, y
our
que ellos
brothers and
estén seguros que
sisters
nosotros
in Venezuela.
seguiremos defendiendo,
And
seguiremos
I want
apoyando
to
al pueblo
assure
de la
you that we
revolución
will
bolivariana.
continue to
También
support
quería
the
decirles que este 1
Bolivarian
de mayo,
Revolution. I
donde
also want to say
reafirmaremos
that on the 1st of May,
nuestra decisión de ser independientes,
we
soberanos, también
reaffirm our
denunciaremos todas las
decision to be
amenazas del
independent
gobierno de Trump
and
en que
to have
intenta
sovereignty.
asfixiar al gobierno cubano,
We
a su
do this in the
pueblo,
face of
mediante medidas
these attempts to
nunca vistas, medidas
asphyxiate,
genocidas, en las
asphyxiate
cuales,
our country.
como recordaron, el 29 de enero el presidente Trump
You will remember that on the
quería enviarles
29th of
esta muestra
January,
de,
Trump
este es un abanico
indicated
que por supuesto denuncia el atropello contra Nicolás Maduro y Cilia
that he
Flores, que
would
denuncia el
increase measures.
secuestro que ellos han sufrido, y que nosotros seguimos en esa
We
campaña que hay en
continue
el
to
mundo
say
entero
that
en favor de estos dos
Maduro has
compañeros. Un
been
abrazo
kidnapped
sincero
And
Gracias,
I want to send
gracias
my hugs
compañeros
and my
Estados Unidos, de
appreciation.
Canadá,
Thank you to
por
people in the
contribuir
US and Canada
a la solidaridad con
for
Venezuela y también con nosotros que
bringing together
en
solidarity
estos tiempos muy, pero muy
for Venezuela
difíciles.
and
Sientan un
Cuba.
abrazo desde Cuba. Siéntanlo,
Receive
compañeros,
our hugs from
compañeras.
Cuba. Thank you, friends.
So that was the video from Maria del Carmen Barroso from ECAP. Thank you so much to Maria del Carmen for efforts against all odds to send us those audio notes today in your greetings and solidarity this important time. Again, the critical message from all of our speakers today and from all of us on the ground organizing anti-war in Latin America solidarity is that solidarity with Venezuela and Cuba is needed now more than ever before. And I wanted, if it's possible, Lidice, or if you had anything you could share about the Bring Them Back campaign and updates about the case of President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores for their freedom. We heard this week that a US judge had determined that, yes, the government of Venezuela could in fact pay for the defense of President Nicolas Maduro, which is necessary for him to have a fair defense in a kangaroo court of trumped up charges. But we know that the people of Venezuela are organizing and mobilizing for his freedom alongside people around the world and in New York City, as I'll announce in a second. But is there anything, Lidice, you could share about the case for President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores?
Well, greetings once again, and I thank our comrade from the ECAP for those words of warmth and love. And yes, it is very important for us to express all of this. What we know as regards, well, the Bring Them Back campaign continues, and we count on all the solidarity with Venezuela, all of our friends and organizations, movements, platforms, and groupings that have come together to support the Bolivarian Revolution for over 20 years. We have to join this campaign. I've said, brothers and sisters, that this is a kangaroo court, as Allison said. And I said, it is a violation of the sovereignty of my country. And President Nicolas Maduro is being held hostage. He was kidnapped. He's a prisoner of war. And compañera Celia Flores has no charges against her. And we have said that it is a farce. However, it is also important to say that we trust that there are no arguments. There is no basis for all of this. All of these lies, one after another, in the accusations against our president. And we also said to the United States and the imperialism, who said that the U.S. just wants to steal the resources, the oil, the gas of Venezuela, and of course put an end to our alternative project, which is an alternative to capitalism and imperialism. What we publicly know is that they have authorized, and we believe this and have said this in terms of a personal position, that this is part of the negotiations underway between the government of Venezuela and the government of Venezuela. You have seen that the United States has had to recognize Delcy Rodriguez, the acting president, because amidst the farce being put on by the government of the United States, they have had to unblock, because this is part of the blockade, part of their aggression, the more than 1,000 unilateral coercive measures against Venezuela. They have also blocked the defense of President Nicolas Maduro. And we have received the information that a license is going to be issued so that they can pay the attorney's fees for the defense of President Nicolas Maduro and Comrade Celia Flores. For us, it is one step We still acknowledge that it's not a legitimate trial, but we know it's a farce and that the empire has kidnapped our president and violated our sovereignty on January 3rd. We have to say that still it is a positive step for President Maduro in the midst of what is being done in the United States for him to have a legitimate defense attorney. So we thank all of the networks of solidarity with Venezuela, your movements in the United States who have been mobilizing and demanding the release of President Maduro and Cilia Flores. So we should not be discouraged because mobilization and consciousness raising, we now say President Nicolas Maduro and Cilia Flores are now dignified symbols of the sovereignty, the dignity of our peoples, and the struggle against imperialism. President Nicolas Maduro has been in touch with part of his family. We have received public information through video conferences through his son, Nicolas Jr., and we're aware of the role being played. In fact, today we were talking about the sacrifice that President Nicolas Maduro is making as a hostage of empire. And this is part of the decisions that we have been making in our government, including the mobilization of our people. Our people have not rested since January 3rd with the communes, peasants, fisher folk, all social movements are in permanent mobilization out in the streets demanding the return of President Nicolas. And we also have to say that we're now at a stage which we have called the pilgrimage for peace. And we are demanding the United States to put an end to the more than 1,000 coercive measures and lift the criminal blockade on Venezuela. So a pilgrimage is underway. It's a call for national unity, not only the forces of the Bolivarian Revolution, but everyone. In all of the 24 states of the country, there are three major currents or rivers of people marching with the we hear this in testimony from youth, from business owners, from workers. They do not agree with the violence. They do not agree with the bombing of our country and the violence. And all the people of our country are demanding the lifting of the unilateral coercive measures, more than 1,000 of them, and the blockade, which, as we have said, has obstructed our development, social services, and the accomplishments of the Bolivarian Revolution. So now we're in this pilgrimage that ends on the 30th, and then on May 1st, these three major rivers of humanity will come together in the country to demonstrate on May 1st for peace and unity. And I'll just finish with this. What has to be done with the various mobilizations is to have strategies and plans to continue strengthening the unity amongst our peoples, because with the cognitive warfare and disinformation, imperialism not only wants to break our unity and the unity within the Bolivarian Revolution, but also with the revolutionary progressive forces throughout the world. And as they try to do this, they try to break and divide two sister revolutions, those of Cuba and Venezuela. But we won't let them do it. We're going to continue with this campaign. We're going to continue to demand this with our three main objectives that are peace, to keep our government intact, and to maintain internal control and the unity of our people. That's what this campaign is all about. So we thank you for your mobilizations. And I tell you, brothers and sisters, that we have to strengthen this campaign because President Nicolas and Cilia are the symbols of strength against imperialism and against fascism. And for more than 27 years, as you know, Cilia and Nicolas in addition to their responsibilities as president and as a deputy and attorney for Comandante Chavez, and with various responsibilities throughout the Bolivarian Revolution, are leaders of our revolution. And today, they are symbols of the dignity of our entire people. And as they are symbols of the dignity of our people, it's of the dignity of all the peoples of the world who have been supporting our Bring Them Back campaign. Thank you very much.
For that comprehensive response. We really can't appreciate you enough for joining today and giving an overview not only of Cuba and Venezuela's historic and actual relationship of solidarity, but also the current threats from the Trump administration and Venezuela's continued struggle, and an update on President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. I think we'll close the panel with that for today. David, of course, if you have anything you want to add, please do. You're very welcome to. And I can go ahead and announce some important campaigns. But David, yeah, go ahead. Lidice is hard to follow, I know. But if you if you have any final words. I think you're okay. You're either looking for unmute. Oh, you're changing your language again.
Specifically, were you answering?
There you go. We can hear you now, David. Any closing remarks?
Well, I would just say it's so important to realize that what Cuba and Venezuela, their struggle is, it's all one struggle. And we have to embrace it like that. We have to try to counter the propaganda against the Cuban and Venezuelan revolution. We have to change the narrative in the media, use all our efforts to block any further attacks or intervention in these two countries, because it is all one struggle. They are on the front lines, and we have to always realize that, and they need all our support, and we have to work hard in any way we can to defend their revolutions, because they are working and fighting for all of us. That's all I would say.
Very true. Venceremos. Thank you, David. Okay, well, big thank you to all of our panelists here today for the monthly Venezuela Solidarity Network webinar and virtual online picket. To close, I wanted to encourage people to participate in a multitude of ways, but I'll mention 3 of support for the campaign to free President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores. The first of which is that the Venezuela Solidarity Network has postcards that you can request and order and use at your tabling events or rallies. These are postcards addressed to U.S. President Trump demanding freedom for President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores, and they are postcard sized. You do need a stamp, but they are a good outreach tool, and it is getting into the warmer months here in the US and Canada, so I hope that we will be out at many different kinds of events and tabling for in defense of Cuba and Venezuela and against US attacks, and those postcards can be a helpful tool. The second way is that you are encouraged to send a letter to President Maduro and Celia Flores. They do have different prisoner ID numbers, so you need to write them separately, but the addresses, I think, are there on the screen. It looks a little funny for me, but I think they're there. And the rules are straightforward, but they do censor letters. They require you use black or blue ink or print like typed. You include a return address. You don't really do any drawings or symbols. If you have any questions, you're welcome to email us at contact@venezuelasolidaritynetwork.org. Letters, of course, are the connection of President Nicolas Maduro and Celia Flores to the outside world, and we encourage people to send them often. then you can go to New York City. New York City is one of cities around the world, and hopefully a growing number of cities, especially in the US and Canada, that are joining in a monthly action on the anniversary of the US bombing attack on Venezuela on January 3rd. So every 3rd of the month, there are protests taking place outside of the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, where President Maduro and Celia Flores are held. It has now been 4 months since the bombing and the illegal kidnapping. And this month, Charles and Inez Barron, who are members of the New York City City Council and our political activists and organizers, are going to be special guests at the protest. So speak out in a vigil. Encourage you to go there if you can, or support them in any way. There's an address, the cbalbertolovera@gmail.com for more information, or you can contact the Venezuela Solidarity Network to get involved. That is the end of our picket action, except that we like to end these actions by encouraging people to, if they can, to turn on their cameras and share some chanting with one another. So I'm going to send you a link, an invitation to be promoted to a panelist. If you are in a position that you can turn on your camera and join us for this, then go ahead and raise your hand or accept the invitation. I'll probably send it anyways, but it's easier to track if you raise your hand. It's just a show of solidarity where we can really see everyone that has been joining, a fraction of us that are able to turn on our cameras. We can chant together as if we were all standing in front of the US Embassy or in front of a symbol of the United States in your country. If we were outside of the Metropolitan Detention Center, united together, as I wish we all could be someday, but it's, not so easy for everybody. I think you should be able to turn on your cameras. Yeah, it looks like everyone has permission. That is excellent. I know some people are not able to do so, so no big deal. If you want to turn on your camera and you have not received an invitation, you can raise your hand virtually and I will be able to find you. Sorry if I ask you multiple times and you don't want to join the photo. Okay, that might be everybody today. That's all right. It's good to see whoever can. Big thank you to the sponsoring organizations of the Venezuela Solidarity Network, which I'll put in the chat because it's a growing list. I'll also add to the chat the link to join as an individual or organization. We welcome folks to join our monthly meetings, and the next of which will be the second Thursday of May, which is May 14th in this case, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Okay. Oh, I have this today. Here we go. Oh, it's too big. Okay. U.S. hands off Venezuela.
U.S. hands off Venezuela.
Venezuela. Cuba now.
Free Maduro y Celia.
On Cuba
Free
now.
Maduro y Celia.
President Maduro.
Free President Maduro and Celia Flores.
Hola, Mirales.
Yeah.
Vladimir.
Hola.
Cuídese.
Saludos. Viva Venezuela y Cuba.
Viva Venezuela. Viva
Venezuela. Viva
Cuba.
Cuba.
Bloqueo.
Long live international
Cero
solidarity.
bloqueo.
Nosotros
decimos
Cuba y
Venezuela, una sola bandera.
Una sola bandera.
Cuba y
Venezuela.
Una
sola bandera.
Qué bueno. Venceremos.
Venceremos.
Gracias,
Un abrazo a todas y todos.
Gracias por todo.
Excelente.
Venceremos.
Thank you,
Venceremos.
Saludos,
Excelente,
Vladimir.
David.
Venceremos.
Saludos,
Hola,
David.
Vladimir. ¿Cómo
Alison.
está?
Station.
Saludos.
Cuídese. Nos vemos.